Hi guys, it's Dr. Heyer from Holistic Health. I hope this video finds you well. It's November 2nd, Monday, and I just wanted to touch base with you in a video over the past weekend. We celebrated Halloween and went trick-or-treating with my nephews. I hope you had a fun, safe holiday weekend. And I wanted to share with you some things in today's video about some things that are going on in the office here and some things that we're preparing for down the road. Friday, which was October 30th, I went to a convention on emergency preparedness. It was called In the Midst of Chaos, and it was over in the Tinley Park Convention Center, and it was this huge convention. There were probably a good 300-400 people there from all walks of emergency medical life, police, firefighters, paramedics, nurses, doctors from ER, and all sorts of things like that. And there were different speakers from different aspects as well. There was a lieutenant colonel, was a medical surgeon in the Army down at Fort Sam Houston, and he was sharing some things of what they're doing to help save the lives of the soldiers that are wounded in action and help them rehabilitate and get back to some sense of a normal life. There was a nurse who was talking about pediatric triage after a disaster. There was a medical doctor who was talking about blast injuries and what are the different types of things that people can be hurt or injured or killed from. I know that's not the most pleasant conversation, but there are unpleasant things that happen in this world. There were all sorts of other speakers. There was a firefighter who owned his own safety and security business, and he talked about evacuations of buildings. And interestingly, I found the most interesting speaker was a lieutenant general. His name was Russell Honore, and he was in charge of going down to New Orleans after the Katrina hurricane and restore order and put things back the way they're supposed to be. And I just kind of wanted to share that even though I went into the holistic, the wellness end of healthcare and trying to help people live as healthy a life as possible, there are emergencies that happen. And I do my best to stay abreast of that type of topic and that information. And even though that's what I chose not to go into that, but I chose a different line of work, I still want to stay in touch with what's going on out there. Because emergencies aren't just things that happen someplace else. They don't just happen in Israel. They don't happen in the Southeast Orient or Southeast Asia. They don't just happen in New York. They could happen here. They could happen in Chicago. We've got some pretty tall buildings downtown, Sears Tower being one of them. And yes, I called it the Sears Tower. I don't care if it's the Willis Tower. But I have friends downtown in the Sears. I have friends downtown in Wrigleyville and all over. And even though I'm in Mokina, Frankfurt, we're not real likely to have a problem. If something happens down there, I want to be prepared and available for my friends. They can stay at my house. They can stay in the office. I got plenty of space. I want to be prepared for them, as I'm sure you'd want to be prepared for your friends and your family. So this video and some follow-up videos, I'll send you some links and emails. I'll send you some videos and things. Not only was this convention really helpful, but I'm actually planning on doing something else in January. I don't know if you've ever heard of CRT or CERT. CERT stands for Civilian Emergency Response Team. Now, it's not like SWAT or police or anything like that. It's basically some of us Barney Fife civilians who just want to help our neighbors and be better citizens. And in January, it's a class that the New Lenox Police Department is putting on. And it teaches us simple things like proper fire extinguishing methods, how to do simple search and rescue door-to-door, how to help deal with issues after natural disasters, tornadoes, floods, things like that. And I don't know the whole curriculum, but you kind of get the idea where we're going. And I'm not trying to be a doomsdayist, and I'm not trying to play on the whole 2012 Nostradamus thing, but things happen, and better to be prepared and have a plan than not. And so that course, the CERT training, will share a bunch of things with me, and then as I learn them, I'll pass them on to you. General Honore was a very interesting guy. I found him to be the most interesting speaker, and he shared some pretty folksy wisdom with us about what we can do to be prepared. Now keep in mind there's 300 or 400 safety medical people in this room, and he says, okay, well, raise your hand if your facility has an evacuation plan. Well, practically every hand went up because you're supposed to have one. It's a law, or at least a very strong suggestion. And he said, okay, well, how many of you have an evacuation plan for your own house, for your own family? And hands went down. And he said, well, how many of you have 3 days store of fresh drinking water and food? And he just went down the list, and no one was putting their hands up. And he simply said, you all are supposed to be the emergency people for your community, and you failed this test miserably. You don't even have things planned for yourself at home. So he obviously made some other suggestions, and he was kind of colorful and used some colorful language, but we got the hint. We need to do better. And one of the things that he said was a big problem with dealing with Katrina in New Orleans was that the cell phones were tied up and emergency calls couldn't get through. One of the things that he said was the cell phone system could really only handle about 1/3 of the population at any given time making calls. And unfortunately, a lot of the calls were unnecessary. One person was calling the other, hey, you getting water in the house? Yeah, I'm getting water in the house. It's up to the first floor. And calls that weren't emergencies. So in the case of a disaster, unless your life is in danger, unless you need emergency treatment, don't dial 911. Don't tie up the phone waves. If you need to communicate but it's not life-threatening, what he suggested is that you guys learn how to text. Apparently it doesn't take up as much of the system, the cell phone system, and you can still communicate by texting. He was just basically using common sense. Don't tie up the phone lines if there's an emergency. Communicate in other ways. And really, I mean, do you have a plan for if your house floods? Where are you going to get backup energy? Do you have a backup generator? Where are you going to get electricity? He said, in the case of floods, other than drowning, the next #1 cause of death was electrocution. So you need to kind of check your basement out. And I know some of you are thinking, well, flooding, come on. We're in Frankfurt, Mokina. Well, General Henry mentioned a very interesting stat that in 1927, the Mississippi flooded 80 miles on both sides down in the southern states, down into the Mississippi Delta. Now, I don't know, I think we're probably more than 80 miles from the Mississippi River, but we're not far from the Kankakee, or the Illinois, or the Des Plaines, or the Fox Chain of Lakes, Fox River. So things could happen, and friends and family in those areas may need our help. So this video is just basically to get the word out there and let you know that we want to be seen as an information center for more than just holistic health care, but we also want to let you know that we're here in case of an emergency. Obviously, do the best you can to communicate with your family, call on your friends and your neighbors, but if you do need some type of help, we're here, we'll do the best that we can. And you know, it's like when I go golfing. When I bring my umbrella and I'm prepared for the rain, it doesn't rain. But when I forget my umbrella, that's when it rains cats and dogs. And I don't want to be caught unprepared, and I don't want you to be caught unprepared. So over the next few weeks, let's work together, and I'll make a plan, and you make a plan, and we can help those who are in need. Thanks. I'll talk to you soon.